Hey there guys, how's it going? Hope you're all doing well, and welcome to a video where we're going to be testing the RTX 3080 on Ark Survival Evolved. Now, if you've clicked on this video and all you want to see is some numbers, you want to know how many frames am I going to get on Ark, and you want to see loads of numbers and loads of gameplay, link in the description to a video over on my tech channel where I'm going to be doing that. This video is going to be showing a range of scenarios and also comparing it to other graphics cards that my viewers might have. So it's almost a little bit of a consumer review and is it worth the buy kind of thing, as well as obviously we're going to see plenty of 3080 gameplay with Ark Survival Evolved. Also, if you're in the United Kingdom and you're looking to get yourself a PC, I'm actually offering a custom build service over on creatortech.co.uk. Custom building each PC, no pre-builts over there. It's all made to order stuff. Got some really good deals going on at the moment, so check that out. We're only going to be able to offer this like personalized catered service for so long before orders get too many that we won't be able to. So take advantage of that if you want to make sure that you're going to get an absolutely beastly machine and you're in the UK. Link in description, email me over there, link is on the website, or emails on the website if you want to email me over there and talk about that. So I don't normally do the tech stuff on this channel. I don't even normally use the webcam on this channel. By the way, I don't even have a green screen right now. We're using the new RTX broadcast technology, Nvidia broadcast. If you've got an RTX card, check it out. You can take out your background noise. There's literally no green screen behind me right now. It's all being keyed out by the Nvidia broadcast software. But yeah, I'm not normally on webcam. I'm not going to start doing that. Don't worry, I'm not what's his name, Mr. Mohawk, Green Mohawk started doing that. I'm not going to be doing that. It's just going to be the voice from now on. I'm sure loads of you will be excited about that. But this is a video that's going to help a lot of people with all different kinds of graphics cards. We're going to be looking at 3 different graphics cards, how they perform at 1440p, so exactly how much performance you can expect to get if you're going to go and get yourself a 3080 and if you are considering getting yourself one. And another reason to do this on the main channel is because I feel like I'm doing a service because no other tech channels will cover Ark Survival Evolved. I know I was looking on the day that it came out for some benchmarks or something, absolutely nothing. The benchmarks that you do see for Ark Survival Evolved are always just terrible. So as someone who does play Ark and I can relate to actually how we do play the game, the settings we use, I'm going to be able to give you much more relatable advice for how your game is going to perform with this new card. So we're testing 3 different graphics cards today in 3 different scenarios. The cards are going to be a 1660, which is a great card to test because it's very similar in performance to the 1060, which is still the most popular graphics card out there at the moment, according to Steam surveys. So a lot of you are going to have cards in and around the performance of the 1660. So this will give you a good idea of how it's going to perform compared to 3080. Now, bear in mind, we are going to be actually running these tests at 1440p, all epic settings, which, to be fair, the 1660 is not built for, but I wanted to include it in there just so you can see the difference. The next graphics card is my 1080 Ti. I did some testing in that before I swapped it out for the 3080. That's a card that is still quite a top-end card and similar in performance to a 2070 Super and an RX 5700 XT. Now, those are 2 very good value cards that have been very popular for the last 12 months. I think a lot of you might have that, and some of you who have those cards will be tempted by the 3080, and this will give you a chance to see if in Ark it's going to be a big jump. And let's be honest, if it's a good jump in Ark, it's going to be a good jump in any game. It's a very GPU heavy game, always GPU bound. So in Ark, you do get all of these crazy different scenarios, which is it's very frustrating even to watch some of these benchmarks because you get different frame rates depending on what you're doing. Are you out in the ocean swimming around? Are you running around your base? Are you flying really quickly around? These can drastically affect FPS. Although obviously I can't do every single scenario, it'd be absolutely ridiculous. I have come up with 3 different scenarios to give us a nice little mix of different behaviors in the game and how that affects FPS and how that affects the FPS of these cards. So the 3 different scenarios. First scenario is going to be us flying on a Wyvern from the red ob to the green ob. This is actually a good test because the Wyvern's been around a while as well, but the island obviously has been around a long time. It's reasonably optimized. You don't get the highest FPS, and that's because it's quite cramped, and that makes it a good test actually, because there's so many trees and so much foliage in this test, as you're going to see. That it is very, very difficult for the game to render. The second test is going to be on Aberration, which is a map that absolutely destroys your FPS. It's not very well optimized at all. I think it's probably the most difficult one that I've found to run. That and Crystal Isles in some scenarios are very difficult to run, but Aberration's a good one. We can test that. We'll test out Aberration. We'll run around on a Megalosaurus for a while. You'll see all the tests are exactly the same. And the final test is going to be like a bases and tames test. So I've made a little village with loads of bases in and loads of tames to kind of simulate how the game might perform in like a worst case base scenario. Don't get me wrong, it's nothing like these Alpha Tribe bases that I've set up, but it gives you a good idea. There's loads of tames in there, there's loads of buildings, there's going to be loads of complex geometry for the graphics card to render, so it is going to be a good test. Bear in mind, this isn't a super scientific test here. I've actually got quite a few things running on the PCs, which means that I'm taking a performance hit while I'm playing. So don't watch these numbers and think you'll get exactly that. You're more than likely going to get 10, even 20% more performance than what you're about to see on screen here, just because I had OBS running, I had Discord running. Opening OBS just takes away 10% performance straight away, no matter what. And I also had Shadow Play running by accident. I didn't mean to have Shadow Play, the action replay thing I had going on, but I had it on for the first few tests, so I thought, well, I've got to keep it in for all of them now. So you can expect probably a 20% performance boost from what you're about to see. Also, you should know my 3080, although I'm super excited that I've got it and I am using it for now, I am going to be sending it back because it's a bit of a dud card. I've got some problems with it. When it runs at 100%, it crashes no matter what. It can run at 99% and work, then when it hits 100, it just crashes. Now I'm hoping there's like a bug fix or something with a driver update, but it's not looking like it, because I also found that when I rendered a video on the NVENC encoder, which is on the graphics card, I had some encoding bugs. So I've definitely got a dud card here. However, I was able to do these tests, which are very similar to what you're going to be able to get, but I had to underclock the card a little bit. So another 5% performance taken off of the 3080, which I know isn't ideal, but I know that most of you want to know this information as soon as possible. So bear in mind, the 3080 is, even though it's going to have some good scores, you're going to see, slightly underperforming to what it potentially could. Hey there guys, this is Editing Jay watching back his video right now. I just wanted to interject here just to take a second to say that we are absolutely about to batter these video cards in terms of performance. This is not what they can perform at, and I've got some gameplay here on screen of the 3080 just to show you, so you don't watch this gameplay and think, oh, it can't really perform as I was expecting. Now don't be wrong, all of my testing you're about to see is good in terms of it's all relative to each other. How the extra performance you're going to be getting between the cards is still correct. However, here's some quick gameplay of me on the 3080 on the center on an MTS server. The reason I say that is because I don't think I mentioned in the video, I'm also playing single player, which again is taxing on your PC, more taxing than playing on a server. And you can see here we're playing MTS on the center, one of the best case scenarios on a quiet island of way over 100 FPS on everything maxed out epic at 1440p, and when we play on the optimized settings at 1440p, we're getting 135 to 150 FPS. So this 3080 is no joke, guys. It's an absolute beast, an absolute performer, but it might not really be reflected in the test you're about to see. But I still think you enjoy them because it does show you the generational leap in performance between all of these different cards. Now, before we play back the videos here, I want to explain to you the numbers in the top left-hand side of the screen, because that's what's important here. I've got quite a few on there. The only ones you really need to take notice of, if you don't care about the rest, is the FPS average and the 1% lows. FPS average, pretty self-explanatory, but 1% lows are important as well. Those are like the stutters that you get even though you have a high FPS number on screen. Like those occasions where something big loads in all of a sudden, but you get a stutter even though the FPS in general is high. That's 1% low. If you have 100% smoothness all the time, the 1% lows will be super high, basically up where the FPS average is. As long as your 1% lows are above 50% of the FPS average, you should should get a pretty smooth experience, and the closer to the FPS average, the better. But when it starts to go below that, you are going to notice some issues, although of course there's always some anomaly somewhere. Just quickly explain the other stuff. The GPU temp and percentage, self-explanatory. The memory is the VRAM, so the video RAM on the graphics card. CPU is, well, CPU performance, but this CPU is super powerful, so it's never going to be fully utilized. Bearing in mind though, this is a AMD CPU, so if you did have an Intel one with a faster clock speed, you could get another like 5% performance maybe, although the 3900X is still a top tier processor, and the RAM is obviously just the RAM in your machine. You'll notice here that you do want at least 8 gigs, probably 16 for all of these tests. So let's go for our island test, flying from the red ob to the green ob with everything on epic, full resolution scale render resolution, which is really taxing on the card. We have everything ticked on that could be put on, apart from my take off light bloom, light shafts and motion blur, because none of them look particularly good, and they're all like, you know, superficial. They don't actually really affect the FPS. So starting off with the 1660. To be fair, it's a bit mean doing this to 1660. It's not built for 1440p ultra settings, but we're doing it anyway just to give you a comparison. If you are playing on a card around this budget, I would highly recommend using optimized settings, which I guess I can go over in another video if you'd like to know my optimized settings, but most people know what they are right now. Just shadows on low, anti-aliasing and post-processing on medium, and turn off some of the boxes on the side, and you get a way better performance. But anyway, looking at the numbers, average FPS 20, not really playable. If you put motion blur on it and you're just messing around PvE, it could be playable, but this is a worst case scenario. Most people don't play with all of these epic setting ons because it really does hog the FPS, and it's not really worth it. But we're here for comparisons. So 1660, all epic settings, 1440p, average of 20 FPS, and actually a decent 1% low at 16. Moving on to the 1080 Ti, which is, as I've said previously in the video, or earlier on in the video, similar to a 2070 or an RX 5700 XT, two very popular cards. Again, all epic settings maxed out of just a couple of boxes unticked, 1440p, and you can see we're getting 45 to start. We've got to level up my Wyvern, of course, but we're going to be at around 40 to 45 here. So we've actually doubled our performance, although obviously 40 FPS isn't incredible. This is still very playable. I feel like if you didn't have that FPS number on the screen, although it might not look like it in the video here, because playing back the video while recording, while having all these other things going on, isn't the smoothest experience ever, I'd say this is definitely playable. You would probably play this and you'd be like, oh, you know, it's running smooth. I'm not really noticing anything. It's obviously not triple digit frame rates. You'd be able to tell that, but it's pretty smooth. So double the performance difference. So to get double again, we'd need to hit 80 FPS in the next test. I actually can't remember. I don't think it's double. I mean, to hit double 1080 Ti performance would be really cool. But let's take a look at how the 3080 handles the same test. So here we are, the 3080. So to double the performance, we need around 80 FPS. And you can see we've got a strong start. We started off in the 70s. Now it is going to drop to 65 here, so into the mid 60s, but we were nearly there for a second. So definitely not double your performance of the 1080 Ti slash 2070 Super slash 5700 XT, but I would say a good 150% better. I mean, actually it is 150%, or technically 50% better than the 1080 Ti, which is pretty good, because let's be honest, although they were saying these crazy numbers for the improved performance of the 3080, a lot of that was for games when they're running DLSS and full ray tracing, not for these slightly older games that were made, you know, 2015, that are really heavily GPU bound. We've seen it as a common thread in these kinds of games that they're only, like, say, you're only getting about 50% more performance with these games, and this is basically what we're getting here. 1% lows are good, although not crazy, and it's definitely a step up in performance. It's not blowing me away. There was a chance that this card could maybe hit 100 FPS like this, but I did do some optimized settings with the 3080, and you'll be glad to know that if you do optimized settings on 1440p, which is basically a lot of low and medium settings with full render resolution, you will get like 100 to 150 FPS. So if you do have a 144 Hz monitor, you are be able to get that around that 140 FPS with the 3080 in this scenario at least, which is kind of like an average scenario to run. So let's actually go to Aberration, because that is a super tough one. And here we go, ladies and gentlemen, the slideshow that is Aberration. Poor old 1660. Why did I do it to this? Now, bearing in mind, the 1660 is no joke of a card. You can run Warzone well on that card. You can run, you know, Tomb Raider, even Red Dead, pretty good on that card. But Ark Survival Evolved Aberration on all epic settings? Not really. But like I've said previously or earlier on in the video, this is 1440p. This is very demanding. 1080p, you could probably actually play this with all epic settings and it would look alright. But yeah, this is actually bordering on unplayable, especially with that 1% lower 5 FPS. When we turned around to look at that forest area and it loaded on all those trees at the back, it just wasn't having any of it. So 1660, quite bad 1% lows and 20 FPS. So moving on to the 1080 Ti, if we've got any consistency here, we should expect to see around 40 FPS, so double the 1660. That's what happened in the last scenario. Shouldn't expect anything too difficult here or too different, and yeah, that's basically what we're seeing, a double. Now we do have a bad 1% load there where we turned around and looked at those trees, but it soon picks back up. So not only do you get above double the performance, but you do generally get a smoother experience with a more powerful card. Obviously just loading in all those trees in the background was a bit quicker with this one. I can tell you from experience, obviously the 1080 Ti is my card. I've used it for quite a long time. 1440p with optimized settings is very nice. You get 60 to 100 FPS, sometimes a few more in almost all scenarios. So still a very viable card to get if you're thinking about getting something around that price. So maybe even the upcoming 3060 will be similar to performance to this 1080 Ti. We'll have to wait and see. Let me know if you want me to benchmark the 3060 and the 3070 on Ark when they come out. Finally, the new dog in town, the 3080. We should expect to see around 60 FPS here if we're going to be consistent. And boom, we just moved around there. It did suffer from that 1% low like the others. They're all suffering from that 1% low. Like I say, Aberration just terribly optimized the way it loads in. But we are getting what we expected. And honestly, if you take off the FPS counter here, you would just know this is a high frame rate just from playing it. The 1080 Ti at this setting was like nice, like I'll call it enjoyable, but this is the difference. The 3080 is, even with everything flown at it, is obviously 60 plus FPS, whereas the last generation of cards, unless you had a 2080 Ti, is definitely playable at 1440p, epic settings, everything, not like higher frame rate. So I guess you guys knew that from the tests and stuff, and actually we're getting really good performance here. We've actually kicked back up here. The 1% lows have really improved, mainly because we don't have like lots of things loading in the background like really quickly, like when you swing around. So the 1% lows become a bit more consistent, and that's why you'll find when you're playing Ark, when you're in like closed areas, your FPS will be way more stable, and then you'll go out and you'll just suddenly do a quick turn into a massive open area and you'll just be like, oh, it's stuttering, it's really struggling, a bit like when you do that flip book and you get stuck on a page. That's basically what's happening here. But yeah, good performance from 3080 as you'd expect. So the final test is in my nice little village here. I did a couple of things to really try and tank the FPS here, namely all the torches. You'll know if you've ever had to burn a load of charcoal quickly and you want it all, you know, to be smelted, and you've put loads of campfires down, that the fire in this game is really badly optimized. So not only do we have all the geometry of all of those buildings, all of the tames and every little detail on them, we've also got those I probably should have taken about the torches, to be honest, because the torches are a bit of a strange thing. like they absolutely tank FPS, a bit like replicators do sometimes. But look at my little village, looks absolutely awesome. Well, I think it does anymore. Got a nice little range of creatures going on there as well. And let's talk about the numbers. Average FPS of 20, 1% lows of 15. This is actually pretty consistent throughout, no matter what scenario. Actually, that's been a pretty consistent number, but these are pushing it. I really should show you Arc. Actually, I think I'll load up Arc on some much nicer settings at the end of the video on the 3080, just to show you how well it can perform. So 1080 Ti, 1440p, full epic in my little village here. We expect about 40 FPS. And we've got 32, so a little bit less. In some of the other scenarios, we were saying double the performance. But actually, when you look at it, and I don't know if you can tell this just by watching the video as well, this looks way more playable. It might be because the 1% lows are obviously higher. They were always going to be higher, but they're at the point now where this actually looks alright. Like, obviously it's not winning any FPS awards, but if you took those numbers off and you were just dithering around, I don't think you'd notice a big problem here. But you'd expect having a 1080 Ti. It's the absolute beast of a card, but this is Ark Survival Evolved in a benchmarking scenario. Very, very difficult for even this card to run. And finally, the 3080 1440p epic settings in my little village, hoping for that 60 FPS here, and I think we're going to get it. Is it how much it's going to drop to? 60? I mean, I think you can call this a fair 60 FPS, and the difference between 35 FPS and 60 FPS is actually quite a big jump. Even though it's only 30 frames. So this is really, really nice, as you can see. So that gives you an idea of the power of this card, how it's going to affect you, and how you can expect it to perform based on what you've got originally. It's all very well me saying, oh yeah, it performs really well, but how much better is it going to perform than what you've got? And I hope that these tests allow you to see that. And we did a whole range of things. So an average of 60 FPS there, 1% lows of 30, which I think added to the whole scenario there of it just feeling pretty smooth. But anyway, I haven't actually given this 3080 a fair shake. This is going to tank the FPS a little bit because I'm recording at the same time, but let me load up Arc right now and we'll do like some best case scenarios so you can see how it'll run. So at the end of the video here, I thought I'd just do a few clips showing you the real power of this card. If you get the settings just right and in the right scenarios, it can really blow your mind how many frames you can actually get. I know I haven't seen numbers like this even when I've put my 1080 Ti on 1080p. And here we've got 1440p, full render resolution. The settings I'm actually using are in the top right hand corner of the screen. The other settings are sky quality just completely down, all ground clutter off, and all of the boxes unticked apart from high quality filtering and screen space ambient occlusion. Those two I like to have ticked. They add just a little bit of shadowing to the map just to make it that much nicer to look at. You might also want to pop on the view distance to high because it can get a little bit jarring seeing the rocks pop in, although it is good for PvP to allow you to see people if they're trying to hide behind a rock or something like that. But as you can see with these settings, we've got real nice fidelity. Looks absolutely beautiful on all of these maps. You can see we're getting easy over 150 FPS up to 200. So your high hertz monitors at 1440p are going to absolutely smash it even with Ark Survival Evolved. Although don't get me wrong, everything on Ultra and in some scenarios it's going to tank, but that is just the nature of Ark. Unfortunately, it's a game made in 2015 and I don't think it will ever be that well optimized compared to what could come out. And who knows, maybe Ark 2 is around the corner with better optimization. I'm tempted to try 4K, but any more benchmarking for this game will be over on my tech channel. So go and check out my tech channel if you'd like more benchmarking and more exploring into the new cards that are coming out and even ideal PC builds that you could build around them. Of course, I've got my website where I actually sell specialized custom PCs for you guys to purchase as long as you're in the UK. And other than that, don't forget to smash that like button on the way out if you haven't done so already. But that's it for this one, guys. Took me absolutely ages to hit this one, so I appreciate you watching all the way to the end. Leave a comment with the word benchmarking if you did watch all the way to the end, and then I'll know you've watched all the way to the end and you are one of the hardcore viewers. But that's it for now. I'm waffling on now. It's just so fun watching all these super high frame rates. I'll see you guys in the next one.